All right, well, I guess we'll get started then, if everybody's ready. I'm going to just start by giving a statement. Eric, are you going to give a statement, or you just want to answer questions? Okay, and then Eric is going to give a statement, and together we'll answer some questions. My name is Joe Canizzo. I'm an attorney with the Lento Law Group. I'm here with attorney John Fernandez and council members Eric Mays and Tanya Burns. I'm happy to be here in Flint. I wish it was under happier circumstances, unfortunately. Mayor Neeley and his administration, frankly, it's our belief, have violated the Flint City Charter. And in violating the Flint City Charter, he's also violated the Michigan Open Meetings Act. The Flint City Charter is very clear in its definition of a multi-member body, an MMB. And what a multi-member body is, essentially, is a governmental body, be it a commission, a task force, a bureau, however you want to name it, the name is irrelevant, that's composed of more than one member that acts or purports to act in the exercise of city business. And the ARPA Community Advisory Committee that Mayor Neeley established is, in our opinion, such an MMB. Now, there's two violations primarily that Mayor Neeley and his administration have commit of the city charter with respect to the ARPA committee. And that was, number one, how it was established, because the city charter is very clear on how an MMB is supposed to be established, and that's either by an ordinance or a resolution, which did not occur. And he's also violated the city charter in how members are supposed to be appointed to the ARPA committee, in that they require approval from the Flint City Council, which also did not occur. So those two violations are what we seek to put before the court and have the court declare that the ARPA Advisory Committee is illegally operating as a multi-member body that was not properly established. Now, the significance of that and why the city and the mayor seem to not want the ARPA Advisory Committee to be deemed a multi-member body is because if it is a multi-member body, under the city charter and under the Michigan Open Meetings Act, the ARPA committee would then be subject to the Open Meetings Act, and it would have to conduct its business out in the open, on record with minutes, and be publicly accessible to Flint residents to attend and be notified about what business it's conducting. Unfortunately, none of that's going on right now, and as a result, the citizens of Flint aren't being informed as to what the ARPA committee is doing, and they can't make their voices heard with respect to its business. So that is what this action that we're filing today, we've already filed as a matter of fact. It's a declaratory action to have the court declare the ARPA committee an illegally operating MMB and dismantle it. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mays.
And quite frankly, what Councilwoman Burns and I did, we called a special meeting to discuss this internally first, not only among council people, but also with the city attorney's office. The record would show that that meeting did not have a quorum. The meeting is mentioned in the pleadings on the litigation. We also had legal opinions that we didn't agree with from the city attorney's office, and the charter, which is the law. The charter, which is the law, is to be read in its plain language for all the citizens to read. And so when you establish an advisory committee, in this case, a ARPA Fund Advisory Committee, the only way the charter allows that body to be formed is with approval of the city council. Those names of people who've been acting behind closed doors, advising on ARPA funds, did not come before council. The Lento Law Group has been watching council meetings, council rules, and council charters on our behalf because sometimes it's necessary. And so we hope that the judge in this case looks at the plain language, declares and makes the mayor and the city act accordingly, and if so, then we'll have a handle on somewhere between 30 and 50 million or more dollars of ARPA funds that have to be allocated. This is a once in a political career type of opportunity to allocate money to residents in categories of home improvements and to do certain projects for Flint businesses and people. And, you know, I'm intent and will continue to fight to make sure that these monies are allocated properly and gets into the right hands of the people. So I thank the Lento Law Group. Appreciate what we're fixing to get, hopefully a favorable interpretation of the city charter, which is plain language for all to read, and I hope it's a quick resolution. Is there any questions?
Is your goal to have the ARPA committee dismantled?
Correct. I mean, ultimately, it's going to be up to the judge how the judge wants to handle it, but in our prayer for relief in the complaint, that is the goal, to have it dismantled. And in the future, should Mayor Neeley want to create a similar body, it has to be done the right way. It has to go before the city council. Yeah, go ahead.
Has the case been filed already?
It has, this afternoon.
Okay.
Yep.
Were there other city council members, Mr. Mays, Ms. Burns, consulted about this? Did they not want to be a part of this?
Well,
Let me answer
sure,
that.
Ms. Mays can answer that.
I'm going to answer the question this way. This is my 9th or 10th year on the council, and I bend over backwards trying to follow council rules and do things the right way. Our charter and our rules tell us that outside of a council meeting, we can only talk with one other council member. In this case, it was Ms. Burns and I. Ms. Winfrey Carter just walked in, but I wouldn't talk to her about what we were doing because I try to stay in line with the charter. And so some council people don't really respect that. But we called a meeting to discuss that. Council members didn't show up, and it's kind of mentioned in the complaint. Mr. Neeley, through Ed Taylor, the Deputy Chief of Staff, threatened to arrest us and kick us out of the dome when we tried to have that open public meeting among all council people. So we've tried to follow everything that we could do. And, you know, in this case, I stuck with one council person under the circumstances, and that was Councilperson Burns.
Councilwoman Burns, Winter's 18 News Media Group. I have a question for you. It was stated that tonight they are supposed to present at the Finance Committee resolutions from the ARPA Committee. So if that is presented tonight and is passed through council and the money is dispersed, how will this lawsuit, will it stop everything right now in its tracks, or how does that work?
Would you want to answer that? Or I
That
can
would
take
be a
that?
question, I believe, for.
Sure, I can take that question. I mean, whether that happens or not doesn't change the conduct that has already happened. I mean, the ARPA committee was not established legally, and members to it have not been appointed legally. So, in theory, it could follow logically that any recommendations made by the ARPA committee are also unlawful because it's an unlawful body. So, but that is something that will likely get handled throughout the course of the litigation.
And if the council move forward on any advice or recommendations, you know, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. The majority of the council, not just Ms. Burns and I, should be conscious of what we're doing, and we should be following rules and, you know, looking right. We don't even want to look like we're doing something not in line with the law and the rules. And the charter is the law and the rules. So let's see what happens moving forward.
Thank you.
Could this lawsuit affect any ARPA funds that have already been appropriated?
My thinking on that would only be if the judge is inclined to make decisions of his retroactively apply. I don't foresee that being the case. It's something that may come up.
Would you like it to?
Let me say this. The ARPA funds that has been allocated, we've done that through the council. The council has allocated. the ARPA funds. It really wasn't a recommendation from any multi-member body such as this. And so, you know, I don't think that the already allocated funds falls into this category. I don't know who's been advising who, but those funds that were already allocated was a conscious decision by the council as a whole.
Are you concerned because the timeline seems to be very close in closing this window of the ARPA money? Are you concerned that it's going to pass and this will not be resolved at the point?
Well, that's a major concern because the category that we're fighting for, that I'm fighting for, and I think some of my other colleagues, is home improvements. And, you know, that might be 200-300 roofs. You got to go through maybe a bidding process. It might be vinyl siding and windows. You might have to go through a bidding process. So we're conscious when we asked the Lento Law Group to come in and help us because we wasn't getting the proper assistance from the city. And we've raised the issue for weeks and months before we got to this point, and it's fallen on deaf ears. So I think we can agree that we're very conscious on the time frame and trying to get things done in certain specific categories of ARPA funding.
And to piggyback off of that, I mean, that's the benefit also of this being a declaratory action, because it's our hope that through a declaratory action, as opposed to just a civil suit, it will be before a judge fairly quickly, is our hope, and we could put it to bed.
Did you feel like this was your only recourse of action at this point?
At this point, yeah.
What was his question?
Did we feel this was our only recourse at this point? Yeah, unfortunately, I feel like Mayor Neeley and his administration, through their continuous course of conduct, have forced our hand in this regard.
And let me add that when we try to call special meetings and resolve it internally, because the council as a whole has investigative power and subpoena power, but we couldn't get a quorum to act with our colleagues, and we couldn't get that done in a timely manner. And I think we had 2 or so opportunities to try to resolve it internally with the majority of council, and you couldn't get cooperation, I believe, for certain political reasons. That's my own political opinion. And we've tried to put it on the agenda to discuss it. So I think at this point, we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's, and we've tried internally, and this is where we're at now.
One more question for me that I can think of. You entered in with 4 other residents here in the city of Flint. Can I ask why?
Well, the city charter is clear as to standing, that any resident has standing to bring a suit against a public official for a violation of the city charter. But we thought it was important because in addition to it being raised by 2 members of the city council who are also Flint residents and independently would have standing on their own, it's the people who are at the heart of this matter. They're the ones who are entitled to the money, who deserve the money, who need the money, and so they should have a voice in this action the same as both council members.
I'd like to say, and thank you to the Lento Law Group and to Councilman Mays. The Lento Law Group has been so helpful. And our hand was forced. We didn't have any other recourse. We do know, and it is boasting when it's said that there are 5 votes on that council. We work for the residents, and the residents are not being served. And that is a problem. We want to make sure that this money is equitably given and that it's not given just to whomever. They're meeting secretly and have been meeting secretly at the Flint Public Library. That's a problem. They're bound by the Open Meetings Act, and the charter speaks very specific to what a multi-member body is, what an advisory and ad hoc committee. We have an ad hoc committee that underneath Councilman Mays, when he was president of City Council, he appointed 2 people, Liddell Lewis and Judy Priestley. And those 19 months, they failed to call not any meetings to even update the council and then the residents. This money, we received $94.7 million into the city coffers from the Department of Treasury. This money has not been allocated. Flint has had 0 home repairs. Saginaw has had roofs, furnaces, and they're into their 3rd phase. So someone has to speak up. Either we sit idly by, or we, with Councilman Mays, with the Lento Law Group, we do something about it. And it's not fair. It's not fair. This money doesn't belong to the 5 rubber stamper votes. It belongs to the people. It's the people's money. It's not our money. It's not my money. It is the people's money, and it should be done in the open. I had a veteran tell me last Tuesday that they were at the library and asked to go at the Flint Public Library and went into the room and asked if he could attend the meeting. This veteran was told he could not attend this meeting. It's not open to the public. It's not recorded with the clerk. We don't know what they're voting on. We don't know how they're allocating. Their recommendations come to us. And if they come to us, I would urge my colleagues to read the charter. The charter is very clear that any person on a advisory committee, that's in the name of the ARPA Advisory Committee, must come by resolution or by ordinance. It's clear.
To the attorney, to Ms. Burns' point, that these meetings are not under the Open Meetings Act. Are you going to address that in your lawsuit?
That is specifically addressed in the lawsuit, yeah. I mean, and like I said, that seems to be the reason why the city attorney's office and Mayor Neeley are so intent on this not being a multi-member body. Because if it is, it's very clear that then it is subject to the Open Meetings Act.
Is there any committee, I'm trying to think myself, in the city of Flint, under the city government, that operates outside of the Open Meetings Act?
I'm going to,
Well, let me say
not that I'm
this.
aware.
When it comes to multi-member bodies, and the definition is clear in the charter that a multi-member body is any committee, ad hoc committee, if it's a board or commission composed of one
More than one
or
member.
more members, well, not one, but more than one member that acts or purports to act with authority from the city, and I'm paraphrasing. So the council is not a multi-member board. That's in the definition. But when it comes to the Ethics and Accountability Board, they act under the Open Meetings Act. When it comes to the Planning Commission, different boards, it's not been operating that like we hear this one is operating. But when the charter was enacted, from that point on, any multi-member board is appointed by the council. The mayor can recommend it. These allegedly 12 people never came before us. We don't know who they are. We don't know what recommendations are coming or not coming. And so I believe we're clear on this one. And there was a prior committee called the Blue Ribbon Committee, and this issue was raised. And so we've seen repeated violations, in my opinion, of this. And so now it's time to go to court and see if the judge will order him to bring people forward to see if they can get approved. We'll see if the judge disbands it and makes him start over with the same or different people. But, you know, we went back and forth on this for a while, and I think the mayor can read just as good as anybody else. And we don't know what the motive is on him doing this. We just believe it's illegal and against the law.
Yeah, let me add something. When I was growing up, I remember my mom telling me, if someone won't open the drawer, it's because they don't want you to see something that's inside. Pretty simple stuff, but to point. Recently I was in court and I had a judge reprimand opposing counsel for interrupting me. And he said, look, to the opposing counsel, there are clearly shenanigans going on here. And what we're trying to find out is what exactly they are. You know, sometimes you can smell something and not identify the source. And that is what is happening here now. Councilperson Burns, Councilman Mays, others, community members regularly are expressing concern about just simply a lack of transparency. And that's what we're asking Judge Christensen to do. Please interpret this and assist us, because it is simply not right for people to not know what is going on with the individuals that are charged with helping them. It seems like a fair thing to ask, and that's exactly what we're doing.
And I'm hoping that other council members have not been a part of this unlawful activity. As we continue to try to highlight it, we want to see, if it comes to light, who is all involved. But the quicker route is for the judge to interpret the charter, give us our prayers for relief, and then move on.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Could you just spell your name for me? I think you're the
Sure.
only one that have it.
First name's Joseph, last name Cannizzo.
Okay, thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Will you be updating the public as the process moves along, court dates? and-
You know, that's not something that we've talked about, but I don't see why we couldn't.
Okay, thank you.
Do we know what judge we pulled?
We do, Judge Christensen.
Judge Christensen.
What timeline do you anticipate for all of this playing out?
Well, I'm going to defer to the Michigan attorney.
Well, as has already been stated, because we're looking for declaratory relief, this isn't the typical type process, so we're hoping that they move very quickly, and if not, we might have to file something else to try to get them to move even more quickly. But we're hoping within a few weeks we'll have some answers.
Go ahead.
The city just sent out a press release just a few minutes ago, about, ARPA funds, like $5 million in ARPA funds being allocated to critical home repair, resolution that will be presented to city council tonight. Do you have any response to that, since we're talking about the topic?
If I may, the $5 million figures came in a sort of preliminary budget that came before council. Once we had Ernst & Young vet or look at the over 700 initial request forms from residents, we knew then, and we know now, that that figure had exceeded 5 million, and at last I knew it was 7.5 million. I've been lobbying for that figure to move from 5 million to about 15 or 20 million, and I've even advocated reopening the process that was abruptly closed by the majority of council. So I look forward to that $5 million discussion tonight, and I hope that you'll follow that process along and see where we get in that category of home improvements. We've had over 5 million initial request forms filled out to date for more than 5 million. It's a big interest there.
Yeah, Sophia, I have very big problems with that. One, because when we look at the ARPA committee, there's 12 people. We have certain wards who have more representation than our wards. And in our last meeting, when I asked the Vice President of City Council, which also serves on the ad hoc committee, Liddell Lewis, how we don't know who our people are. We didn't pick them. We weren't in the process. We were told to Google or Facebook. That's not how we pick our people, or they're supposed to come by resolution or by ordinance. So you have a committee that's meeting that the public isn't allowed, and none of the council members. It's not open to the public to even know what they're doing, what they're voting on. And when I asked the question during the meeting, one of the individuals I was told he was no longer on the committee. So Ward 2 has 2 people on the ARPA committee. Ward 4 has 2 people on the ARPA committee for representation, and Ward 8 has 2 people. All the other wards only have 1 person from our ward. That's not fair representation. And so that, to me, it's an unfair and it's an unjust process done in secrecy. And Councilwoman Priestley stated, when I asked the last meeting, she did attend one of the meetings. It has been months that we have been asking, where are their meetings? The administration had told us vehemently that they were not meeting, which was found out to not be true, that they had been meeting at the Flint Public Library, having a catered dinner.
Right.
Who's catering these dinners for them? And who's attending these meetings? Because when the veteran who served his country and would like to have some of these ARPA funds spent, he was told he couldn't attend this meeting.
and I'm gonna make it a little plainer from my point of view. She called them the ARPA committee. I call them the illegal ARPA committee, and I think that's very important because whether they're meeting or not meeting, the key is that when we posted the special meeting, we posted it as discussion about the illegal formation of the so-called ARPA committee. And it can't be appointed solely and unilaterally, in our opinion, by the mayor. He can recommend them. They can be approved by council. I'm gonna look at who's representing the ARPA committee in my ward. I don't even know who they are. Don't know them by name, don't know how many of them it is, don't know where they've been meeting at. That's me. So I don't even give them the credibility. They might be innocent residents, I don't know. But everybody gonna know that we are filing this litigation because we believe by the plain language of the law, the charter, that they're functioning as an unlawful committee, giving advice on between 30 and maybe 50 million or more dollars. I can't sit in my seat comfortably with that.
You know what day and time the committee meets?
Beg your pardon?
You know what day and time the committee meets?
Do you know?
Exactly, that's the whole point.
I've been told that they've been meeting on Tuesdays and that they're meeting in between the times of 4:30 and approximately 7:30. And so that committee at the Flint Public Library. They had their initial first meeting, which we found out at our last council meeting, that their first initial meeting was at Mott Community College. We weren't made aware of that. And again, our ad hoc committee has not called one meeting and since they've been appointed to that in November 2019, nor have they attended any of the special ARPA meetings, so that we were being upfront, following the Open Meetings Act, along with, making sure we kept the public informed. So we don't know. I mean, it was a shock when they said, hey, I attended one of those meetings. Oh, you did? We don't have knowledge of that. I don't want the money. We had $1 billion coming here with the water crisis. The Flint residents didn't get any of that. This money needs to hit the target. This does not need to be another fleecing of the city of Flint. We need to make sure the residents get this money. There are people who need roof repairs, furnaces, windows, insulation, siding. There's a whole host of things. And this isn't charity that some people or some council members trying to say. We're doing what every other city has done. We're behind the gun because every other city is outpacing us, including Saginaw. They're on phase 3. We haven't given any home repairs. So there were residents in the wintertime who could have had their furnaces repaired. There were people right now in the springtime, when it's our rainy season, who could have had their roofs repaired. And this ad hoc committee, which is part of the 5 rubber stampers, have not made and kept up their council members. We don't know what's going on. When you're operating in secrecy, that is the problem. This isn't our money. This came from the Department of Treasury into the city coffers. And this is treated, one of your questions, I think, Tom, was, are any other committees meeting or is there a difference? This money was considered to be what they said, like grant money. The citywide advisory handles our community block grants. They come before the city council by resolution. This is the process. Why is this group not following the process? And why is a veteran couldn't get in to sit in just to listen? Why does the city clerk not know? Most of all, how do you keep the city clerk, the official record keeper, out of it?
Let me say this. The primary issue is that they must be appointed properly. Before we can get to where they meet, if they meeting open and closed, I'm really concerned about correcting the process that the mayor is using to appoint folks to take care of city business or purport to take care of city business, whether they know that they're being used wrong or not. Secondly, as we move through this litigation process that the Lento Law Group is helping us with because we couldn't get assistance properly from the city, I want to see when the news and people start contacting the other council people, what do they know? What's their position? Because we should be able to correct this outside of court. We should be able to correct it with 5 or more council people enforcing the charter and the law, and we should be able to nip it in the bud. So far, they didn't show up for special meetings. They refused to discuss it and put it on the agenda. And so, regardless of where they meeting at in secret or whatever, how do they get appointed? That's the initial question, and I'm hoping that the judge and the court will resolve that. We don't need boards and commissions out here purporting or acting on behalf of the city with no legal authority. That would be a little chaotic.
Where is the compliance firm, Ernst & Young, in all of this?
We'll see. We've been asking for Ernst & Young. I've been asking, and we've been waiting for them to show up in council meetings for the last 2, 3, 4 months, and they've been missing in action. So, you know, this is the beginning of trying to get things done in a timely manner, and we'll take it step by step. I've got confidence after looking and reading the complaint that the Lento Law Group and Joe and John, I believe that we'll get our answers. We good?
That's, I
Thank
have
you.
nothing else.
Oh, where and when is tonight's meeting?
Dome.
Dome.
It's at the city dome. I know.
And-
It is at the
and
dome.
what
It is at
time?
the dome,
And what
5
time?
o'clock.
But I would say, while you're here, if you want to talk to any of us as we get ready to leave, you're welcome. We don't have to be sitting at a table. Joe interviews just as good one-on-one, him and John. And so if there's no more questions or comments,
Well,
hey,
I have nothing
these
further.
folks
We're
are
adjourned.
all yours. And we followed the rules. I seen another council member come in, Miss Winfrey Carter, almost